Welcome back to another episode of the Tech Talks Daily podcast, your go-to source for all things tech and business tech related. And I'm your host, and today we're going to be diving deep into the realm of AI, machine learning, and much more with today's special guest. Her name is Mara Cairo, and she's from the Alberta Machine Intelligence Institute, or AMII for short. And Mara is a seasoned expert in the field of AI. She wears many hats. She's an electrical engineer and has profound experience in the hardware development space and a keen focus on micro and nano-technology. And not only that, she's also been instrumental in helping her clients propel their products to market. But what sets Mara apart is her passion for using AI for good. And today she leads a technical team at AMII that is dedicated to aiding industries in building their internal machine learning capacity and helping them tackle their most challenging business problems using machine learning, but beginning with that business problem before even thinking about any technology. So in today's discussion, we'll talk about how management of machine learning projects differs from traditional techniques, and also explore some of the key considerations for businesses venturing into machine learning for the very first time. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Alberta, where Mara is waiting to share her story. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I am Mara Cairo, product owner of the advanced technology team at AMII. My team is really responsible for connecting our industry partners with the expertise and talent needed to implement machine learning into their business. So I really lead a team of machine learning scientists and project managers, all working with vastly unique industry problems, but all really trying to move the needle and progress our clients' work on their adoption of machine learning and AI.
Fantastic. Well, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast. And something I always try and do with every one of my guests is learn a little bit more about their origin story. So can we begin by asking you to share your journey, which began, I believe, from an electrical engineering career to your current role as product owner of advanced technology at Alberta Machine Intelligence Institute. Sounds incredibly cool, but can you expand on that for me?
You bet. So I went into electrical engineering from high school. I just always had a knack for math, and I really liked the idea of applying math to real world problems. So engineering seemed interesting to me. And, when I was a little kid, I was just interested in electronics in general. I remember having like a old Nokia phone, and I would take it apart and like see inside of it and just be in awe of what was going on. So electrical engineering seemed like the right choice for me. And in my studies, I specialized in the nano engineering option. So really focusing on the design and manufacturing of really small things. We're talking like micro nanoscale devices. So right after university, I got a job in kind of the hardware space. Again, designing and manufacturing really small devices, obviously to make our electronics better and better. And I spent about 10 years in that area. I started working in a clean room. So when you're building such tiny things, a small speck of dust can ruin your whole day. So in the clean room, you're really protecting what you're working on from yourself, because humans are dirty and we're particulating all the time. So in the clean room, it's a very controlled environment, and we're able to better manufacture these things on a small scale without having to worry about our dirty environment. And then I started realizing I didn't really love working in a clean room. It was very autonomous. I was working mostly by myself with really specialized equipment, manufacturing things, but I found myself enjoying the work outside of the lab more. And by that, I mean meeting with clients, talking with the rest of the engineering team, sort of collaborating on bigger ideas. So I felt like, the sole contributor piece of engineering wasn't really for me. I liked the more management side of things. So I pursued my project management designation. And I took on a role at that same company as a project manager. And what I saw like over my 10 years in the engineering space is we were building hardware, but more and more of our clients were interested in taking the data that the hardware was generating and doing something with it. So that was sort of my first preview into the world of AI and machine learning. And I thought, okay, this is really cool. And obviously, AMII is fairly well known in the Edmonton and Alberta area. And when I saw there was a project manager role at AMII, I was very keen to explore it. So I started at AMII about 3 years ago in the role of project manager. And since then, I've moved to the role of product owner, where I'm really just, again, leading a team of machine learning scientists who are building really cool things. But we're not building hardware anymore. We're building software.
And I'm curious, looking back at your career and the experience and insights that you've gained along the way, how does the management of machine learning projects differ from, let's say, traditional project management techniques? And maybe you could share some challenges and some of the solutions that you experienced in this regard too.
You bet, yeah. It differs greatly. Something that I learned when I started at AMII that I maybe wasn't expecting so much. With traditional project management techniques, you're generally planning out tasks that have been done before. So it's easy to estimate resources, and you have a fairly clear idea of how you're going to get to the results. There's still roadblocks along the way, definitely, but you're usually following a path that has been sort of explored in the past. When I started managing machine learning projects, what I realized is these projects are still like fairly experimental and exploratory in nature. So we don't always know how we're actually going to get to the results. We obviously have some sort of confidence that we can achieve something and beat whatever is currently being done as a baseline. But it's more difficult for us to estimate resources and how long things are going to take and the exact roadmap to get there. And, it's difficult to guarantee exact outcomes. So it's hard for us to say what performance we're going to achieve when we just start out with these projects. So it was a learning curve for me, definitely. One thing that AMII follows is what we call a machine learning process lifecycle. So it's our idea of project management for machine learning specifically. And it's a very iterative approach. There's generally 4 phases. So it starts out with understanding the business and the problem. So defining the problem up front. And then from there, you move on to the data. So understanding the data, cleaning the data, collecting the data, analyzing the data. Then the next phase is actually building the machine learning models. And then finally would be the delivery and acceptance of the models. But at any time, when you're in any of these 4 stages, we remain flexible and we allow ourselves to go back a step, because sometimes you have a very well-defined business problem, but when you start looking at the data, you realize that this data isn't the data that we need to build the tool that's needed to solve this business problem. So let's go back and rescope the business problem based off of the data that we do have available. Same can happen when you're finally building the ML models. You'll realize maybe there's no real way for us to validate this model. Like, how do we know if it's accurate or not? So then maybe we would go back, we rescope based off of the information that we're gaining throughout. So that's one of the reasons why it's so hard for us to plan upfront. But we present this machine learning process lifecycle to our industry partners very early on so that they're accepting of it. And we really welcome these lifecycle switches, is what we call it, because we learn a lot along the way. And it allows us to go back and reassess if needed. And so we don't have to pigeonhole ourselves into a problem if we're realizing that this isn't actually the right path to go. So that's been really great. And that's the methodology that we follow, just to allow ourselves the flexibility to explore and iterate and make sure that we're kind of always keeping the business problem front of mind, instead of just following an interesting machine learning model for the sake of it.
Love that. And it's so interesting to hear about the differences in managing projects and indeed your iterative approach to this. And also having the business problem right at the heart of things. I think it's so important. It's so easy to get distracted by shiny new technology. And of course, for many of our listeners, that they might be business leaders looking to explore machine learning for the first time. So you've already offered some invaluable advice, but is there anything else that you'd offer around where they should start, etc.?
You bet. I think it's really important to understand what this technology is and what it isn't. It's great and it's able to solve a lot of really complex problems, but it's also not just this magic dust that you can sprinkle on any problem necessarily. The way I like to think about machine learning is you're using data to make predictions about the future. So that sort of takes any ambiguity out of the term machine learning. So starting with that understanding, and then, as you said, assessing your current business problems. Generally, our advice to business leaders who are looking to explore this area for the first time is to go after the low-hanging fruit. So these are more simple problems to solve with a high return, and they'll help you get your colleagues on board as well. So it's kind of a quick win for you to say, hey, look, it worked in this case. Let's kind of get everyone on board here and adopt this technology in the larger sense, because we've proven that it can work in this one case. Also, it's really important to involve internal stakeholders in the process. Machine learning is very collaborative. Oftentimes, you're working with domain experts, data experts, and you'll only be successful if you have everyone on board and you've sort of invited everyone to the table to have a say and be a part of that process. Finally, it really is about the data. Most of the models that we're working with do require a fair amount of data to be able to make predictions. And you really need examples of what you're trying to predict. So going into machine learning and not having any data, you probably won't get too far. We find the most success with clients who have been collecting data over the years and sort of see the value in a business problem related to the data that they're collecting. And that's a really great starting point.
And before you came on the podcast today, I was doing a little research on you and your background, and I quickly learned that you've got a background in hardware development, particularly in micro and nanotechnology. Again, incredibly exciting and cool. But I'm curious, how does that background influence your approach to machine learning projects? Is there a few ways that those two worlds collide for you?
You bet. Yeah, I guess I've always been attracted to sort of the shiny new thing. So when I was in university, it was all about nanotechnology. But there's a lot of similarities, truly. I think in both spaces, every problem is very unique. You're working with different industries, different hardware requirements, different data sets. You're able to be industry agnostic. So that's really exciting because you're dipping your toes into areas that you're totally new to, and you're always talking with different domain experts from different industries. But there's challenges too. There's probably not a clear recipe or solution to the problem that you're trying to solve. Definitely in micro and nanotechnology, as well as AI and machine learning, these are novel ideas, and we're working with very creative people who are trying to disrupt industries, which means that probably the work that they've done has not been done before. So there isn't a blueprint for us to do the work. But the benefit of that is that it encourages creativity, and I get to work with some extremely creative and brilliant engineers and scientists to solve those problems. So there's actually a lot of similarities. So I think I came into AMII with some sort of background in what to expect, what the roadblocks would be, and the challenges, and it just makes the work more exciting, I think.
And I also read that you're someone who's passionate about using AI for the good, or the greater good. And I think it's such an important topic right now. So I can ask you to share some projects or maybe initiatives that you've been involved in that particularly embody this philosophy. Because again, it's such a big hot topic right now, isn't it?
It definitely is, yeah. I have some projects and initiatives to share with you. So really the best part of my job is seeing AI being used for positive change. At AMII, we have our principled AI framework that ensures we're doing just that. So really, this is just a way for us to make sure that our work is aligned to benefit society. what that looks like in the real world, some of the projects that we've worked on, for instance, wildfire prediction. We're working with a research group out of the University of Alberta who has 40 years of severe weather data that they've collected. And wildfires are, no pun intended, a very hot topic right now. Alberta has seen lots of active fires super early this season. And it's really impacting people's lives. So this group came to us with this data, and we were able to take it and be able to make better predictions about where these fires will probably or potentially come up in the future, so that the groups necessary to be involved in this work are more prepared. Another cool project that we've worked on is in the agriculture space. So how do we feed our growing population? We work with a research group, National Research Council of Canada, in predicting protein abundance from plant DNA sequences so that we can ensure that the crops that we're growing have high protein contents for our growing population so we can feed everyone. We also work with lots of companies in the oil and gas space to reduce emissions. So, making sure that their processes are as efficient as possible, make sure that we're maintaining equipment properly, that we're not, our preventative maintenance is being able to predict when equipment goes down before it goes down so that there's not as much downtime. We're also working with a water treatment plant, just making sure, again, that their processes are as efficient as possible. And then there's some really cool work being done in precision medicine, so tailoring disease prevention and treatment to an individual. So those are some of the projects that we work on. And like I said, the best part of my job is seeing all of that work and the positive change that it will hopefully bring to us. But there's a few larger initiatives as well. Obviously, the tech industry has had some problems with diversity and representation. So the focus at AMII is to have a tangible impact to change this as much as possible. We're at the forefront of gender diversity in STEM through a couple of our program offerings like Kickstart and AI for Good. And we were also the first organization in Alberta to commit to the United Way's period promise. So what that is an initiative focused on tackling period poverty by providing free period products in every AMII washroom. We also just had our Upper Bound conference last week, and we awarded 800 talent bursaries to recipients all over the world to support travel and accommodation costs at a total of $500,000. And 81% of these recipients self-identified as a member of a marginalized group in STEM.
To further bring to life everything that we've talked about today, is there anything you can elaborate on how your team at AMII is currently helping organisations build their internal machine learning capacity, and also what this process looks like and what the key outcomes are intended from this? I think it'll really help people listening.
Of course. So AMII has a number of products and services to really meet clients where they're at. So not every client that we work with is going to be ready to start building out ML models. It starts with education. But on the advanced tech team, we work with companies who are more advanced. We talk about our AI adoption spectrum and sort of the process that it takes to get to the point where you're actually ready to start building your internal capacity. And that's really the main goal of the team that I work with. So what that looks like is connecting these companies to the talent and expertise to be able to help them build their capacity. We're doing this kind of twofold. So first is working with the client to understand their problem and their data and start building these machine learning models to solve the business problems that we've defined with them. So the main kind of outcomes there is all of the code repositories and experiments that we ran along the way. But we also run our internships and residencies program through the advanced tech team. So when a client signs on with us, I play matchmaker and I go and recruit machine learning talent who has a relevant background that we know is going to be really valuable to the specific client and the problem that we're looking to work on. So we're giving client access to the talent. We work very collaboratively along the way. But another outcome is the potential for our clients to hire the intern or the resident after their time with us is finished. We don't necessarily see machine learning as something that's done after a 4 or 12-month term. And, we know that our clients will be most successful if they continue to take this work forward internally. We really are about helping our companies build internal capacity. So that recruitment piece, that talent piece really comes into play when the project with AMII is done and the client is able to carry it forward because now they've sort of retained some of that talent internally.
A few moments ago, we talked about the importance of starting with the business problem first before even thinking about technology or going into solution mode. So with that in mind, do you have any examples of a challenging business problem that was effectively addressed using machine learning and the kind of impact that later went on to have in the organization?
Yeah, every time I think about this question, I think about all of our problems, all of our projects. Every project does have its own challenges. And because of sort of the nature of machine learning, we don't necessarily know going in what is going to be a challenging problem and what isn't. Seemingly simple problems on the outside can end up being fairly complex once we get in. I would say the most common challenge is data access and preparedness. There are different perceptions of what data readiness is. Our machine learning scientists have a different perception of machine learning readiness than, say, our clients coming from industry. So there's generally a lot of work that needs to happen up front to make sure that we're all on the same page. There's this saying, garbage in is garbage out. So if the data that we're working with isn't useful, the predictions that we're making are not going to be useful either. We show a pie chart to our industry partners at the beginning of our projects, sort of a idealized ML project where, half of the pie is the actual model building. But in reality, a big piece of the pie is things outside of machine learning. And a lot of that is the data readiness. Again, you need examples of what you're trying to predict. So if the event you're looking for is rare and you don't have any data on it, it's probably going to be harder for you to predict it happening in the future. Another challenge, like I said before, these are very collaborative projects and we need a lot of people at the table for us to be successful. So we need commitment from subject matter experts, and collaboration really is key. These projects can take a village. They can be, large initiatives to take on. And we're most successful when we have a multidisciplinary team helping us through that. Finally, you kind of talked about the impact. I didn't speak to any specific examples, but we have had great success with our industry partners. The general goal is always to beat some sort of baseline. So that could be a baseline that they already have internally in their processes, or maybe we're building a baseline and then we're trying to beat it with more kind of advanced ML approaches. Some examples I can think of in the supply chain, we're helping our clients to increase throughput or to help better forecast demand of various products. In the oil and gas sector, we've helped clients to predict downhole events that aren't sort of able to be predicted with the sensors on the tools that are downhole. And I mentioned earlier as well, predicting machine failure on industrial equipment. So before machines fail and it causes downtime, we're able to sort of flag when you might need to do some maintenance on this piece of machine before it goes down so that, you're not, you don't have your equipment down for too long and it's not costing too much money.
Well, I've got to ask, where do you go from here as we look towards the future? What other exciting developments do you foresee in the field of AI and machine learning, particularly in the context of solving business problems? That's what it's all about. And it seems to be moving at such a rapid pace at the moment. So I'm curious how you see this evolving, not just this year, but next year and beyond.
Yeah, so I think it's a really exciting time because it feels like everyone is finally paying attention and sees the potential value. It's no longer a technology that's just for tech companies or AI companies. I think companies from all industries are figuring out that if they're not exploring or using this technology, their competitors likely are. So what that means for us is there is going to be more business adoption, and I'm really, really excited for that. I think when we talk about a year or two down the road, I see the future of this technology as still really human-centric. So I see it being a great augmentation of humans to make us better and safer, an automation of more mundane tasks, but also a simplification of more complex tasks. This technology allows us to problem solve in dimensions well beyond what we could possibly understand as humans. So I think it's just going to open up a pile of new business problems for us to work on with our industry partners and hopefully really get adoption and acceptance of this technology.
Wow, sounds incredibly cool. And I'd love to keep you on the podcast, get you back on in the near future, see how things are continuously evolving. And for anyone listening, just wanting to find out more information about you, your team, or just stay up to speed with the kind of thing that you're doing here and find out more about you or even contact you, what's the best starting point for everything?
The best way to get up-to-date information on AMII is to visit our website at amii.ca and sign up for our newsletter. The newsletter gives you great info on upcoming events, newly released content, and ongoing discussions in this space. You can also follow us on our social media accounts at AMII Thinks on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We're also on LinkedIn at Alberta Machine Intelligence Institute.
Fantastic. Well, as I said a few moments ago, I'd love to get you back on later in the year because I think it's going to be a lot of more things to talk about, especially all around business problems. But more than anything, just a big thank you for taking the time to share your story with me today.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
And that brings us to an end of another incredibly enlightening episode today. And I would just like to express my heartfelt gratitude to Mara Cairo for joining me on the podcast today, sharing her extensive knowledge in the world of AI, machine learning, micro and nanotechnology, and so much more. And I think today, I for one, have learned about the unique challenges and opportunities in managing machine learning projects and the essentials for businesses embarking on one of those machine learning journeys. And I think Mara's passion for utilising AI for good, combined with her dedication towards helping organisations enhance their machine learning capacity, is certainly for me given valuable insights into the world of AI adoption. But this is a pretty big topic and I'd love to bring each and every one of you into it. So if you've got anything you'd like to share, any questions you'd like to ask, email me now, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, just at Neil C. Hughes. We'll keep this conversation going together. That's how we all learn and hopefully increase adoption along the way too. But enough from me. Thank you for listening as always, and until next time, don't be a stranger.